He came to the beach to think. That was what he told himself anyway. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of brine and damp wood, as though the tide had pulled back a secret and left it rotting on the shore. Out beyond the sand, the water glinted under a bruised sky, silver one moment, grey the next. The waves here never really crashed. They folded over themselves like a thought that never finished. For months, the choice had been there, quietly eroding him. Stay in the coastal town where the days slid into one another like beads on a string, or take the job inland, far from the water, where there would be money and structure and something people called stability. The problem was, he didn't know what that stability felt like. The town was familiar, which made it both comforting and suffocating. The job was unknown, which made it both terrifying and tempting. He walked along the shoreline barefoot, the sand cool and damp under his feet, the tide coming in just far enough to kiss his ankles before retreating. Every time he took a step forward, the water seemed to pull him back. It felt like the beach itself was undecided. He told himself he'd decide by nightfall. Far out, something shifted in the water. He stopped without meaning to. At first he thought they were swimmers. The town sometimes got strange visitors who liked to push the limits of the cold water. But the shapes were wrong. The sea was rough enough that any swimmer would be bobbing, splashing, breaking the surface with sharp movements. These figures were still, too still, rising and falling only with the swell of the tide. One of them lifted higher, as if the water itself had risen beneath it. A narrow head, long hair slick and dark as kelp, shoulders that disappeared into the deep. Then another appeared beside it, and another after that, forming a line that mirrored his own path along the sand. They were far enough that he could not see their faces, but he had the uncanny sense of being studied. He kept walking, so did they, keeping pace. When the tallest raised an arm, slow and deliberate, he stopped again. It could have been a wave, he told himself, or a trick of the water, something breaking the surface. But the thought that it was a beckon, that they were calling him, lodged itself in his mind. And if they were calling, they must want something. The possibilities bloomed like black flowers in his head. They could want company, they could want help, they could want a witness to something hidden under the waves. Or maybe, and this was the one that hooked into him, maybe they offered something in return. Better than the town, better than the job, better than the gnawing uncertainty that had been his constant companion. He stepped into the surf. The first chill around his ankles made him flinch, but he stayed. The shapes didn't move closer, but they didn't vanish either. He studied them, searching for details that might betray their purpose. The tide shifted, and their silhouettes wavered, stretched, shortened. Sometimes he thought he saw arms, sometimes fins. Once, he could have sworn one turned its head toward the others, as if whispering. His mind began to fill in the blanks. He imagined them offering a place where the tide decided everything, where the currents carried you where you were meant to go, and there were no questions about what was right. A place where the very idea of choosing was meaningless. But other thoughts crept in, unwelcome. The deep water was not his world. He knew nothing about breathing salt or moving in the dark. He thought of teeth, of hunger, of crushing pressure. He stood there, water swirling around his shins, unable to move forward or back. If he stepped away now, the choice would still be waiting. The town or the job, the familiar or the unknown. Instead, he lingered. The sky grew heavier. Clouds swelled and sank into each other. The horizon narrowed until the water and the air seemed to be the same color. The tallest shape tilted its head. The others floated in stillness. The tide rose to his knees. He told himself he was weighing his options, but in truth he was waiting. If they wanted him, they could take him. That way it wouldn't be his choice. That way the weight would lift. The tallest moved first. No splashing, no warning, just a smooth, inhuman surge forward, closing the distance in seconds. Then another was beside it, and another. Their forms broke the surface with a quiet precision that made him think of hunting animals. He stood frozen as cold hands slid over his wrists. Moory hands gripped his arms, his ribs. They were colder than the water, stronger too. They pulled him off his feet. with the inevitability of a tide that had already claimed him. The surface folded over his head. He opened his eyes, but the water was murk and shadow. For a moment, he could still see the faint smear of light above. Then something pressed against his chest, hard enough to drive the air from his lungs. He had time for one thought before the dark closed around him. He hadn't chosen this, but someone had.